All right, so I'm back with Breya. I've made quite a few changes actually. A number of these were kind of at the instigation of Brian Weissman, and a few others are kind of testing, but I think all of them make sense. And basically, what we're doing is trying to kind of realize the fact that the deck, first of all, is being four colors. It's very, very difficult to run tax rack in this deck. So we've decided just to pull it and focus on getting my card advantage in other ways. And then I've also found more ways to take advantage of the commander. So let's go over where the deck's at now. So first of all, because tax rack is out, I can actually add more non-basic lands. I've kept two basic islands just in case somebody. That's one for a Ghost Quarter and one for Path of Exile. So we'll hopefully be fine with that. But also because I want to have a grand total of 8 islands for Vedalken Shackles, and this gives me 8 islands to work with. Two blue white, two blue black, two blue red, and the two basic islands. So it works out real nicely. And then what I put in there is I put in Inventor's Fair and I put in Spire of Industry. So over the other 2 islands that I cut out. So basically I have one more, with Spire, I've got one more land that produces any color, which is fantastic. It works extremely well in this deck. With Inventor's Fair, for one thing, a little bit of life does not suck. Oloro giving 2 per turn is amazing. Inventor's Fair giving 1 per turn is certainly very good, but also because it's the tutor for any artifact, and the artifacts in this deck are so powerful. It also has a really nice combo with Crucible of Worlds, where you just continuously, you basically got a Jam Day Tome at that point, 4 mana to go draw a card, except it's a card of your choice. This is really nice. Along the lines of adding more speed, I actually added Mox Opal. I've been wanting this card for a very long time. I've been wanting it in a number of my decks actually, so I'm very happy that I was finally able to get one, and it works exceptionally well in Breya, who immediately enables the Metalcraft of Mox Opal, but also because this deck, being 4 colors, is very hungry for getting its colors, and Mox Opal is very good at that. It's an excellent target for War of Invention. It gives you one more way to use Tezzeret on 0, or to Trinket Mage your way into getting another color when you have something like a heavily colorless draw with Trinket Mage. You can fix it with Mox Opal, so it's very nice. On top of that, I also added Spell Pierce to the deck. I wanted more early disruption because the deck, well, basically, when I pulled Land Tax and Scroll Rack out of the deck, I took out the counter spell that it's blue and you pick up a land, and I wanted another counter in the slot because the number of counters was essentially correct. And I think Spell Pierce is actually, in some ways, slightly better than that card. It isn't a hard counter, but I don't really like playing with the card that forces me to pick up a land when I'm not using land tax. I am using Tithe, of course, but Tithe is much easier to use than tax. With land tax, you could play a game where you would stay even on lands on the board, and you wouldn't worry about it because you'd play a land first, they would match you, and that would go on for a while until you counter a spell, return a land, and suddenly you get to draw 3 cards. Well, without tax in here, there's no real reward for running that card. I like hard counters a lot, but I think Spell Pierce is still an excellent card. It's a card I've wanted in the deck for a while, so I think it'll be good. I also added, I don't know if this was in here before, but Skull Clamp is absolutely phenomenal in Breya. As an absolute nut job for not running it in the beginning. Eventually Brian twisted my arm and I put it in there and realized he was 100% right about Skull Clamp, so that's pretty much, I think I covered it in another video, but I think it's probably here to stay now that I've had even more time testing it. But because Skull Clamp is so good, I put Stoneforge Mystic in the deck. You really want to go get Skull Clamp in this deck. It is just that good. The problem though is with Stoneforge Mystic in the deck, I swapped Stoneforge for Seal. Essentially, Seal prevents him from doing some broken stuff. Stoneforge allows you to do broken stuff. Since we want to go more in the direction of forcing them to have the answer, Stoneforge is the swap. The problem, of course, with Stoneforge is that if you only have the one target Skull Clamp, while that's good, you lose some flexibility in the card, and you also run into these instances where you may have drawn your one equipment, and then you draw the Stoneforge, and it's really unfortunate. So I went ahead and added Sword of Feast and Famine, because that's the Skull Clamp and Feast and Famine are basically the two best equipment cards in all of Commander. Next to those two, you would have Fire Ice and Jitte. And then in a maybe somewhere distantly, you might talk about like Batter Skull or some equipment that has like where you search for lands or something. But essentially, you'll never get that deep because you shouldn't be running more than, I mean, Batter Skull maybe because it comes with a creature, but other than that, you shouldn't really be running more than the two swords, Jitte, Skull Clamp, and that's in a super creature heavy deck. Well, I'm not that heavy, so Sword of Feast and Famine, however, is just so insanely good and synergistic with so many things that this deck wants to do. You can lock somebody in a soft lock by getting them to no cards in hand. It's the best Disrupting Scepter ever printed. You get them to no cards in hand, and then you can forbid lock them out. But also, Sword of Feast and Famine has, just monstrous synergy with your own Winter Orb. It's just an amazing card. And the fact that it's pro green and black is good for two reasons as well. Green is actually a really tough deck for this. If they play with, if they pack their deck with just disenchant after disenchant effect and a lot of speed, then they can be the fast ones and you're the slow ones. And so Feast and Famine can help a little bit with that, but mostly it allows you to, mostly a lot of times with green, the other thing is they clutter up the board and you're not gonna typically punch through with your commander, but with Sword of Feast and Famine you can a lot of times, it'll quickly end a game. So if you actually stack, and I had a game where this happens, if you stack Feast and Famine and a Skull Clamp on your commander, you hit for 7, so you can it's a 3-turn clock because of commander damage, so you can very quickly close out a game. And then the other thing about Feast and Famine that's interesting is it protects your guys from the Abyss. So if you have a Trinket Mage or a Stoneforge and you have the Abyss, or you have, most importantly, Dark Confidant, you actually have a way to protect him, and he'll swim through the Abyss as long as he has protection from black. Do keep that in mind, however, when you, for example, Stoneforge Mystic into Skull Clamp, and you clamp the Mystic because you have the Abyss out, thinking that he's going to die. Don't then equip the sword on him unless you have a pretty good reason, if you don't need the cards or whatever. So that's the so Stoneforge Mystic and Sword of Feast and Famine. We covered Mox Opal. Clamp was already in there, but it's empowering these other things. What other changes have been made? I don't know before if I had Felwar Stone. I do think it just makes perfect sense in this deck. Easy fit in a 4-color deck, so in it goes. And I don't think there's much else here that's a big shocker in terms of changes. So let's get to some games. Well, one return to the deck, an old friend. I added Phyrexian Metamorph. Now this is in the games we're about to play. Metamorph is actually Metamorph is actually not in the deck. But this was, Brian had recommended him going back into the deck. One of the things that's interesting about Metamorph, for example, is that you can copy one of your opponent's creatures. And because Metamorph turns your guy into an artifact, it works well both with your Breya, as well as the fact that it will swim through the Abyss. So it's a really nice interaction. You can also use Metamorph on a copied guy with the Ready. So there's a lot of interesting things going on there, and it just makes a lot of sense in this deck. So I put Metamorph back in, but unfortunately, lastly with Metamorph, you also have this potential to whir into a Metamorph in the middle of combat and pull off a combat trick that could flip the tempo of a game. So has a strong potential there as well. So just, it is a great card, and I do like to have it in the deck when I can. I want to keep the artifact count high for the Opal much as I can, and it just seemed to make more sense to run the Metamorph than to run, say, Copy Artifact because of his high flexibility and the other things that he can do. And I don't need another Signet type effect. One card Brian did suggest that I don't have in here is Thought Vessel. That's the artifact that gives you an unlimited hand size for 2 mana. So Metamorph could be the Vessel, and I think it probably was in the games we're about to play. However, what I feel seems to what seems to have developed from having played is that if I have a problem with my hand size, my opponent has a bigger problem. That usually means I've won the game already. So for me, it felt more like a win more card, and in terms of value and potential, it's a lot less than Phyrexian Metamorph. If I've got Necropotence running, I've already won the game. If I'm drawing tons of cards off top, I've won the game, and so forth. So I just don't think Vessel is, it's a card that you'll always play if you have room for it. But I don't think this deck does, because it's just absolutely tight. The list is so strong. So let's check out some games, and hopefully you stuck around for all of that. So I'm gonna go backwards, and we'll work our way back. I think I had one loss earlier. My opponent basically just got the nuts on me. No, I back up. This was hubris. So I got a great start, and so did my opponent. My start was better, and I was Crucible locking my opponent. I had a counterspell in hand. He had 3 mana out, and I said, well, what's he going to do? There's really no way out of this. I'll go ahead and just tap out for a basically pointless spell, so that so I tapped out for a spell that really wasn't important and didn't change much at all. And he punished me by dropping a Mana Crypt and Vandal Blast. No, he had 2 mana, but he dropped a land, a Vandal Crypt, and a Mana Crypt, and he Vandal Blasted me, and it reduced me to 1 land. So I had a counterspell in hand and just completely gave the game away. So this is don't. And the problem, of course, is that the more games I play against bad decks, I notice my play starts getting sloppy, and then I play someone good, and I get punished for being sloppy, because against bad decks, you have them in that position and they don't come back ever. So it gets kind of boring, honestly. So I start just playing kind of fast and loose. I just want to get through the game, so I'll deploy stuff with no counter, without protecting my board, because there's nothing they're going to do about it anyway, and it just ends the game faster. Well, this guy was not a noob. I shouldn't have played like I had the game in hand and I could just do whatever I wanted. So a well-deserved punishment on that game. The rest, I think I lost one here where this is all early on with some testing, but we'll check out some of these games here. So anyway, I'm kind of going to hop around a little bit through these, so hopefully though we'll manage to entertain you. So I had to mulligan here, and I'm playing against a guy playing Derevi, and I wanted to kind of go through this game. The top card of my deck was Strip Mine, so of course I put it on top because I have plenty of lands, and Strip Mine is just a great way. We both mulligan, so it gives me a high potential to disrupt him. So I don't strip him until his upkeep, in case he has an instant he wants to play, namely Crop Rotation, but I do strip before he draws in case he had the potential to draw into Crop Rotation. So unfortunately it does very little against him. He has quite a fast hand, so I was thinking about Winter Orb, but Winter Orb was generally bad against Derevi, so I just want to match him mana for mana right now. The goal, of course, is to get the Abyss down, and I'm thinking that once the Abyss hits, I win, right? So it's definitely not a given, however. So now the game goes a little bit long. So I've got the Abyss out against Derevi, and I was thinking here, so later on I realized this was a mistake. I was thinking Vedalken Shackles wouldn't be super important, so I lead off with Shackles in order to push my commander through, with the thought being that the commander will keep Derevi sort of locked under the commander's control. But that actually makes no sense. It was completely backwards from how I should have played. I should have let off with my commander as the bait spell and then pushed out Derevi. So anyway, on my turn, he plays Derevi in order to tap my vault, so I use the vault to Teachings for a mana drain. The Abyss eats Derevi. This is going to happen many times. So now I'm just trying to play carefully. I always have to leave 3 mana untapped if Derevi has the potential to come into play. So remember, he taps a Workshop. That's fine. I get a wasteland so I can get him down to 1 blue. And since I do, I then swing, and now he can't replay his Drevi at the end of my turn. So I'm trying to stall him a bit. I fetch Inventor's Fair, so I don't have to worry about mana vault damage, which is another nice thing about having Inventor's Fair. I can play the long game with the vault out, and it's no sweat whatsoever. Plus, you know, eventually at some point I was hoping to fetch with it. So upkeep, he taps my land again, so he's still got 3 cards in hand there. We both have 3 cards in hand. So I swing in, so he can't replay the Drevi at the end of my turn. He plays Momentary Blink, trying to blink his commander, but you don't tell the commander not to go to the command zone, it will always go to the command zone. So I figured that was a good opportunity to go ahead and cast Winter Orb, so I do. And then knowing that almost 100% he's going to, during my upkeep, he is going to play Derevi and tap my Winter Orb. I vamp at the end of his turn, and I Vampiric for, well, you'll see, Mind Twist. He's got 3 cards in hand, so I figured he'd play his commander. He does. That's exactly what I wanted. So let's twist away the rest of his hand. And I take out Farseek, Mauldrifter, Temporal Manipulation. And with Mauldrifter, Momentary Blink, that could have been bad. So he draws out Eternal Witness, replays it on his Time Walk, and plays his Time Walk. But that doesn't really get him too far. He makes a clever move with Derevi to untap my orb, so I won't have access to that mana. And for 1 turn here, if he has a way to tap my lands or strip mine, I won't be able to mana drain. So I don't attack his. Now I'm not gonna. You'll notice I'm not swinging, and the reason. So anyway, I Mystical Tutor, by the way, there, and I fetch. So he's gonna make an upkeep play with Derevi. He's gonna tap. What is it? Winter Orb. I fetched a. What did I fetch? Vandal Blast, I believe. Yep, Vandal Blast. So I gotta get him in the orb. I gotta get him in Winter Orb block. So I'm just working it. But anyway, you notice I don't swing into Derevi. I never swing into Derevi when he has 4 mana untapped. And the reason is that if I do and kill his commander, he'll get to play it a second time and get a second tap or untap effect. And I do not want that. So banking on the fact that he probably didn't top deck a counter, I go ahead and Vandal Blast him right away, and I do manage to hit. So it's going to be a little bit harder for him to be replaying Derevi over there now that he doesn't have free mana to work with under the orb. So as a result, I go ahead and attack into a potential Derevi here. He taps orb, which I figured would happen, and then he just blocks. So we get nowhere. I mean, this is a great game to showcase exactly how like annoying Derevi is. Like, what an idiotic card to have printed. I mean, this card is just like on the scale of like not doing anything. So this card is bad in basically every way possible. It doesn't do anything good. It's doing nothing for him whatsoever. And it's highly annoying and extending the game for absolutely no purpose. Like, it's just making the game take forever, and he's not getting anywhere. So anyway, he plays Derevi again, taps my orb again. And of course I can't swing. There's no point. And then finally, impatiently, he goes for Sun Titan, and I attempt a mana drain, and he has a counterspell backup. So I guess this looks good for him, but I'm really not seeing it. He gets Witness on, like, Time Walk? Don't think that makes too much sense under Winter Orb. And as it turns out, this is the turn that he is going to lose. So I Fabricate, Sword of Feast and Famine. I get this card very, very, very often because it's so amazing with the board state here. So I go get I get Sword and Feast and Famine. I use Tezzeret for 3 to get Crucible. I replay a Strip Mine. I use a Strip Mine for mana to equip the sword, and then the sword untaps the Strip Mine for me. After that, I sack the Strip Mine to kill his untapped land. I sacrifice the Mana Vault and Grim Monolith to kill his Eternal Witness, now that I have untapped lands, leaving him with just a Sun Titan. Sun Titan nosedives his way into the abyss. And at that point, my opponent has walked himself right into a Winter Orb Crucible lock. He gets to untap Hallowed Fountain, play a land, try to find a way out, but meanwhile, of course, Sword is beating him down. And I guess he didn't want to play that game, which I don't blame him for. So after that, if he doesn't find a disenchant, he gets wastelanded every turn, and the orb is not affecting me even slightly. thanks to the Sword of Feast and Famine. And what's really nice here is in a moment, I'm going to be able to move the sword over to Breya, Tezzeret for 1, go get Skull Clamp, and refill my hand, drawing four extra cards. And Breya, of course, will hit much harder. And within the context of those 4 cards, I'm sure I'll find even more gas. Alternatively, I also have Inventor's Fair in play. So I get attack, put the sword's effect on the stack, tap my lands, sack the Inventor's Fair, go use that to go get whatever it is I want. Probably Gilded Lotus, but I mean, who knows at this point. And then follow up, untap all of my lands, exit combat, play whatever the thing was that I got. So lots of good stuff happening here, and I could replay, and I can theoretically just replay the Inventor's Fair because the Crucible. So what I have here is I connect with my opponent, use the mana to Inventor's Fair and go get target artifact, untap all of my stuff with the sword, replay the Inventor's Fair for free, cast the artifact off the workshop or whatever, and then redo it the next turn. So yeah, probably pretty good. And this was a great game too because it also showcased a lot of the synergies between running, for example, Inventor's Fair and the sword in this deck, and why it makes a lot of sense, as well as Winter Orb in the Abyss. And the nice thing here too, I could just play Confidant, equip the sword to it, and after hitting my opponent with it on one of the creatures, and then Dark Confidant will survive the Abyss, and I'm in great shape there as well. So I had some other good games that I'd like to show you. I believe these games against Sir Tryhard were good. I think. No, it was Laconin. And I think it was the second game here. So we'll go check this one out as well. Yeah, so I had to mulligan. So I mulliganed twice against an Azusa. And my opening hand is Urborg, Mana Vault, Ponder, Sword of Feast and Famine, Stoneforge Mystic. So I actually have one of my 2 Mystic targets already. And this is not great. I'm banking on drawing something. I'm gonna keep because I have Urborg Vault, and I really want, having 4 mana on turn 2 is pretty good if I can just find something to do with it. And if I can find any of my 10 fetches, I get to run out Stoneforge Mystic, go get Skull Clamp, and then on the following turn I get to vault the Sword of Feast and Famine in my hand down, equip the Stoneforge Mystic, hit my opponent, untap my mana, cast my Ponder, get my Clamp down. Like, really good stuff happens. So this is, you can only mulligan so often, and having Sword of Feast and Famine potentially against green's really good. Well, I drew Trinket Mage instead. My opponent gets Secure a Tribe Elder. I draw Factor Fiction on the next turn. He gets Courser and plays a land with the land on top. I drew Dark Confidant. I could play Confidant, but I feel like my hand is pretty full, and what I really need is to play Confidant without tapping that vault, because I need that vault to let me catch up at some point. Luckily, I finally draw an Ancient Tomb, so I'm able to play Confidant without taking any damage due to it being a swamp. My opponent runs out so we'll slow down a bit now. It gets a little more interesting. My opponent runs out a Garruk Primal Hunter, a Burnished Heart, a Llanowar Elf, makes a beast, has an active Priest of Titania. I draw, for my turn, a fetch land and a workshop. So I play the fetch into Trinket using Ancient Tomb mana. At this time I had Mox Diamond in here over Metamorph, so I Mox Diamond the workshop into the graveyard, although I think Metamorph is definitely much better. I would have loved to have been able to have metamorphed his priest, for example, at some point in this game. So anyway, I Stoneforge Mystic into Skull Clamp, which is nice because now I'm not going to draw the Mystic. And then because, kind of desperate times, I actually decided the play here is clamp the Dark Confidant. So I'm clamping my card drawing, and then with the mana off of my mana vault, but with the extra mana, I then clamp Trinket Mage and I pass to the turn. And off the Dark Confidant, I drew Force of Will and a Gilded Lotus. So there is some potential for this to work out. My opponent draws to the turn and then uses Garruk to draw 3 cards due to having 3/3 Beast. and that puts him at 6 cards in hand. He plays Tectonic Edge, but I only have 3 lands, so he can't kill anything. And he's revealing on the top of his library Praetor's Counsel. It's the 8-mana sorcery that regrowths all of his cards and gives him unlimited hand size. That's not good. And then on his turn, he taps 7 mana and casts Genesis Wave X equals 8. So we are forcing that. So if I had not skull clamped my Dark Confidant, I would be dead right now. Don't ask what led me to believe that was the play, but I was actually quite I was looking for some way to get some kind of defensive posture. I thought maybe if I clamped him, I had 2 mana left over, I could potentially draw a like a counter, or get some blue mana and then ponder my way into a counter or something. But anyway, so I got the force. So since I have it, I go ahead and force with Fact or Fiction. So I choose Fact or Fiction because I have Skull Clamp in play, and I have Ponder in my hand, and I'm thinking that I need to stop Praetor's Counsel. So the best chance I have to do that would be to try to ponder my way into a solution. And Fact or Fiction, if I were to try to do it that way, I wouldn't have any mana left over to actually play the counter. So luckily he does me a solid. So he attacks with his 2/4 Courser of Krufix. So I throw Trinket Mage and Stoneforge in front of it. Since Trinket Mage is equipped with a clamp, it's a total of 4 damage, which will kill it. He can choose to do 2 damage to my Stoneforge and not give me the cards, or he can kill my Trinket Mage and give me the cards. He plays correctly and kills my Stoneforge. But now I can attack his Garruk with my Trinket Mage, and he's kind of in a tight spot in the sense that he can block with his Burnished Heart and give me 2 cards and lose the 2 lands he would have got from the Burnished Heart, which is good. He can let it through and I kill Garruk. That's good. Or he can block with his Beast and I get to draw 2 cards, and that's good. So we're definitely swinging here. I drew a Vandal Blast. I could kill his Burnished Heart beforehand and take away one of his options, but I decided that I'm in a lot of trouble with the card on top of his deck, so I really can't afford to do that. I'm really hoping to actually hit mana here, or a decent counter, and I do not. I get Impulse and Grim Monolith. So Grim Monolith has some potential. So I go ahead and ponder first so I can decide what I want to do. I pondered a Mystical Tutor, and the top card of my library is Whir. And then for my turn, I play Grim Monolith off the Ancient Tomb so that I can cast Gale the Lotus and pass the turn. So I'm thinking I cannot stop Praetor's Counsel here. But what I can do is, first of all, he only has 4 cards in his discard pile, so it's really not the worst thing in the world. If he gets Secure Tribelt or Cultivate Genesis Wave Courser, the card that we care about is Genesis Wave. And I've got a couple of things that I want to do here. I'm holding Impulse, Mystical Tutor, I've got Gale the Lotus, so there's no way, since Force of Will is gone, there's no way for me to go get a counterspell. I could Mystical Tutor, Force of Will on top, and Impulse into it if it were still in the deck, and if I had another blue card to actually, force with. So that's just not going to happen. So what I'm thinking is, at this point, since I can't stop him from getting those cards into his hand, I can try to stop him from playing it. Top cards Whir, so I can Impulse into Whir, and then afterwards I can Mystical Tutor and go get Mind Twist. And so I'm going to try to stop him from playing his cards one way or the other, possibly both if I can. So let's see how this plays out. So on his turn, what he's trying to do now is he's going to try to put more cards in his graveyard to extract additional value from his Praetor's Counsel. So he plays a Skull Clamp and draws 2 cards right away, and then draws 2 more off his Llanowar Elves and his Priest because he's got so much mana over there, and he figures he's going to get them back anyway. But he's kind of getting a little greedy, so he plays Soul Ring, and then he, instead of just counseling now and drawing 6 cards and having 13 cards in hand, he wants to keep pushing it. So he then plays Yavimaya Elder, sacks the Elder, gets a few more lands. He casts his Commander, puts those lands into play, casts a Worn Power Stone, hits me with Burnished Heart and says go. So Impulse into War of Invention, Mystical Tutor into Mind Twist, and that's where my decision changes. So because of everything that he's got going, I decide to, rather than getting Mind Twist, I'm going to get Terminus here. And the reason I'm going to get Terminus here is I know that he wants to resolve his big money spell, But I'm holding a Sword of Feast and Famine. So if I can slow him down just long enough, I've got a two-hit punch here. I can Terminus his guys off the board, which will prevent him from doing Skull Clamp problems. See, if I Mind Twist him now, he's just going to Skull Clamp his way back to a full hand. So it doesn't really do me any good. So I Terminus, get his guys off the board. Play the sword, use the sword and the Skull Clamp for mana to power War of Invention, and go get myself a Winter Orb is the plan. So let's run through how this works out. So sword down, Whir, fires, and I got Orb. So he makes a beast. He casts Gilded Lotus, which is, I'm pumping the fist now, and he plays his commander, plays one land. So Gilded Lotus on the table. I natural into a Mind Twist, Vandal Blast away, Skull Clamp, Soul Ring, Worn Power Stone, Gilded Lotus. So insanely savage. And on the next turn, I can't get his whole hand, but I get 6 cards out of his hand. He's now down to 2 cards in hand. I'm down to 11 life, though. I'm taking a serious beating. And down comes my commander. He plays Sylvan Library. So anyway, I equip sword, and boom, all my mana comes back. And I'm able to clamp my way into a disenchant, kill his Sylvan Library, sitting on 2 counter spells. So he gets Solemn Simulacrum down, not a problem. It's actually an potentially interesting card for this deck, although I'm not really running enough basic. Put sword on Thopter, smash in. Mid-combat, I go ahead and activate Breya. Realizing I should have put the clamp on the Thopter as well because I was planning to sack it. And it will touch the graveyard. Post-combat, after I'm getting ready to, at this point, I've got complete control of the board, and my opponent knows it. But I'm getting ready to set myself up even further with a stronger board position. He has no cards in hand. He is down to 2 mana. He's got 2 useless guys in play. And I can't remember exactly what I sacked Breya to gain 5 life, actually, to jump back up to 9. So anyway, I thought it was a pretty amazing game because my opponent put me in I was in a bad spot. I had the terrible mulligan. Everything was going wrong. And then I managed, through a combination of I think making good decisions, but also my opponent not having it all together. He got a little greedy, and I drew very well. His deck is actually excellent as far as it gets packed with card drawing and mana ramp. So I mean, it's what a green deck should be doing. But yeah, just very, very satisfying game there too. So I think I had a few other games. I could run through them, but I think the video is probably long enough. I've certainly been talking quite a bit, and I really just wanted to kind of showcase the 2 games because they were both really interesting. I think they were very interesting in demonstrating some of the recovery power of the deck. And I also, again, wanted to point out the loss that I had as a direct result of making bad decisions. And that's the way Magic should be. You should be punished for making bad choices. If you're lucky, you might be able to get out of your own bad decisions, but you want to win because you felt like you made the right call, and you want to lose because you felt like you made the wrong call, because that means you can always get better. And it also means you've done your homework and you prepared your deck, and you're prepared to make the right decisions, and you can feel good about your wins. Of course, there's always the luck base wins, and that's fine because that means you built your deck well to have those. But it's extremely satisfying in the games where you really earn it by thinking your way out of the situation, and that's the most fun for me. So definitely the games I try to showcase. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this long video with lots of talking, but I am just super excited about Breya. It is extremely fun commander to play with. So much synergy all over the place. And really, if you look at it, some of the sort of grossest, most degenerate cards in the entire game, minus the cards that are banned, are almost all in this deck. There's very few cards that are as busted as the cards that you get to cram into this thing, and that is pretty cool. I like it, and I hope you do too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.